You are going to need your notebook today for notes on the new project. You're going to need your little plastic tray. You still have that plastic tray from your locker. Have that out and handy. Grab your ceramic notebook, find your plastic tray that you used on your last project, or maybe you didn't use it since your last project. Be back again today. If you didn't finish your plate project yesterday, you'll have time to finish it today. But we are going to start the new project. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. I'm very excited about today, but I'll get to that in a sec. Let me take a attendance here first. Got Tracy and Davis and Tom and James. And Josh. Hey, Josh, time. Good morning. Good morning, people who are at home. If you didn't already, please grab your ceramic notebook or whatever notebook you have available to take notes on today, because there's some new terminology coming your way, including Kurinuki, because I know that is a new term for most of you. Some of you who had me for Ceramics A earlier this year have actually done Kurinuki before, but not in this way that we're going to be doing. So I'll explain all of that in a little bit. So I mentioned a little bit ago that I was super duper duper excited about this project, and I really am, because it's so different than anything else that we do for the whole rest of the year. And one of the things that's kind of exciting about it is it can make you a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to be working in a way that is very different than we've ever worked before. And for some people, that's super exciting and freeing. And for some people, that's super uncomfortable because you're used to making things really perfect and really neat, and we're not necessarily going to work really perfect and really neat for this project. So for some of you, it might make you a little bit uncomfortable, it might push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but I think you're really going to enjoy that freedom of having things be a little bit more loose than we normally would do. The other reason that I think this is such a great project is because you have the potential, you won't, no one has ever done this, but there's a potential of some fire and some pyrotechnics, and nobody's going to burn their eyebrows off, I promise. I just said that to kind of like get your attention and be funny. But this is a project we're going to fire outside. And so there is fire, there is flame, which is, for me, for a pyromaniac like me, super duper exciting. And you're going to get to participate in that. So I'll get to the fire aspect of this in a little bit. So in a nutshell, kind of big picture, what we're going to be doing for this project is creating a box using the Kurinuki technique with a wabi-sabi aesthetic. And those are a lot of new words there. We're going to go into what those words are in just a little bit. Another new word is raku. So this is going to be raku fired. It's going to be a jar with a lid, but that jar with a lid can be a lot of different things. It could be a jewelry box, it could be an incense holder, it could be a candle holder. So it's not necessarily just, it doesn't have to be just a box with a lid. You could turn it into something that would function in a different capacity. Like if you put holes in it, it could be a candle holder or an incense burner. So just a little bit about Raku. I'm going to show you a short video just so you have a kind of big picture of what the Raku process is like. And that will help you understand why we're doing this project in the way that we are. So this is just a video of not us, another school Raku firing. It's funny, I've Raku fired with students for now probably 12 years, and I always forget to record a good video of the process. I always have to use somebody else's video. So they're building a kiln outside. This is exactly like our kiln. I built our kiln. It looks exactly like this. We just hook up a propane tank, and then I have a weed burner that we use for our torch, and we stick that in the kiln. The pots heat up for about a little less than an hour, so it's a really quick firing process. And they heat up to about 1800 degrees. And so while the pots are heating up, there are some metal cans standing by with stuff that burns, sawdust, paper. And when the pots have heated up to 1800 degrees and the glaze is all shiny, you pull them out, and at first they don't look like much, right? They just look like green, shiny pots. But you take those hot pots and you put it in the sawdust, you put it in the newspaper, and immediately the hot pot lights everything on fire, right? So then you slam the lid on tight on those metal canisters, and what happens is all the oxygen gets eaten up inside that canister because the fire eats up all the oxygen, and that brings copper out of the Raku glazes. Raku glazes are really special. They have copper in them, and when you pull them out and then dip them in water to cool them so you can actually touch them, because even after they've sat in that canister for a little bit, they'll still be really hot. When you dip them in water and scrub them off, this is the effect that you get. Metallic, rainbow, shiny glazes. And you can't achieve this glazing effect any other way. It's only through Raku. So that's what we are going to be doing with this project. And the day that we're going to Raku fire will be next Friday. So it'll be an optional thing. If you can come back on a Friday, people who are distantly learning, you can come back on Friday if you're not quarantining, if your parents are cool with it. And so we'll do it for a good part of the afternoon on Friday. I don't know how long it'll take. It kind of depends on how many people want to fire their pots, because remember, firing your work is optional. But if you want to fire this project when you finish with it, then you're certainly invited to come back and be part of the Raku firing. So I'll talk more about Raku firing as we get closer to next Friday. But big picture, the reason I kind of showed you that is because you can see the Raku firing process is pretty rough. And so we have to pull the pots out with tongs. So they have to be really strong pots. This firing process is not food safe. So that means we can't make cups and bowls for this project because it wouldn't be food safe. So we're making something that's not meant to hold any sort of a food and is a really pretty strong project. So this is the new vocab. Please take 4 or 5 minutes to get these new words into your notes. People at home, please do the same. A lot of Japanese words in this unit. Raku, Kurinuki, and wabi-sabi are all Japanese terms. So it's kind of a lot of terms today, but we're just getting them all out of the way, all at once. Well, I'm going to start talking about them. You keep writing if you haven't gotten these all down in your notes yet, because these are words I want you to be comfortable using and also understand what they are when I talk about them. So the first new term is raku clay. Raku clay can be kind of a noun and a verb, and it can mean a lot of things. But for today, what you need to know is about raku clay, which is a type of stoneware, and it actually looks a lot like stoneware. So people who are at home, remember, you have a bag of stoneware, and then you also have a little bag of raku, and they're very similar looking. They're both gray, so you got to be, making sure you're using the right clay. People who are here, I have set out bags of raku, and I'll point those out to you in the demo. So raku clay is extremely gritty. So when you grab your raku clay today, if you kind of take a little bit and mash it through your fingers, you're going to feel the grog. The grog is that grit, those little stones that are in the clay. And the grittiness of raku is what helps it survive that firing process. You saw those pots being pulled out with tongs from a red hot kiln and then put into a air temperature barrel. So most clays couldn't survive that. They would crack. But raku is pretty strong and tough because of that grit, and therefore is more likely to survive that process without cracking. So we're going to use raku clay for this unit. Next term is Kurinuki. Kurinuki is a Japanese process for making pots by carving or subtracting away from a block of clay. And this is 100% different than most of what we've done in this class. Most of what we do is we add clay. We add little legs to our dog sculpture, or we add a foot to our plate project. With this project, you're going to start with all the clay that you're going to need in one block, and you're going to carve it away until it looks the way you want it to look. So it's a very different way of working. And I think you're going to enjoy the fact that it's just going to be so different than what we've done. Aesthetic is a set of ideas or opinions about what makes a work of art interesting or beautiful. Aesthetic applies to a lot of things, not just a work of art. The way you dress in the morning is an aesthetic choice. Like goth is an aesthetic, or athlete is an aesthetic. So aesthetic applies to a lot of different things, but what we're going to apply it to is the look of our work of art. And usually what I encourage you to do, whether you know it or not, is I encourage you to have a clean aesthetic, something that's really neat and really clean and really smooth and really refined. What we're going to go for with this project is a wabi-sabi aesthetic. Wabi-sabi doesn't mean messy, all right? Don't make that mistake. Wabi-sabi doesn't mean messy. Wabi-sabi is a Japanese aesthetic that considers imperfection to be beautiful because it mirrors nature. Nature is not perfect. You look at rocks on the shore of Lake Superior, or if you look at a tree as you're walking through the forest, it's not perfectly symmetrical. It's not perfectly neat. It has imperfection to it, but that's what adds to the beauty of that rock or of that tree. So that's what we're kind of channeling in this project, something that's wabi-sabi, echoing nature and the imperfection, but the beauty of nature. Term number 5 is key. A key is a mark that helps align the lid of the box. So let's see here if I have a key that is easily identifiable. So these are all examples of Kurinuki boxes that I've made in previous trimesters. Can you put phones away, please? We put devices away, please. Thank you. So here's a Kurinuki box that I've made, and you're probably not going to be able to see it. Maybe you can. There's a tiny little dot right here just inside the lid, and there's a matching dot right there. So I always know which way this lid goes on by lining up that key. So that's something you're going to be creating, because otherwise you might have a hard time remembering which way your lid goes on correctly. So a key is one thing to help with that. A flange is another thing you're going to add. That's that little ledge that sticks down from the lid of the pot, or it could stick up from the pot into the lid. And that's to keep your lid fitted. So that's the only additive part of the process. There's paper in there. And so everything else is going to be carved away except that flange and except the little knob at the top. And that is your final term, finial. The finial is a handle. You're going to be adding a handle to the top, but a creative handle, not just a ball, a creative handle that allows you to easily pick up that lid. And also, it creates a little focal point, like in the case of this Kurinuki box right here. It's kind of a handle. I mean, I could pick it up by that, but it also just gives your eye something to look at. We just kind of focus on that little spot right there. It gives us a focal point, and also functions as a finial for that lid. This fit, by the way, is not a really great fit. The lid doesn't go on all the way super well. So that'll be a thing we'll work on. So those are your terms for this unit. Now let's look a little bit closer about what Kurinuki is actually all about, because you're going to be starting a Kurinuki, starting the process today. So you're going to start by taking a ball of raku and just beating it up a little bit. You're going to be paddling it, hitting it on the table, using paddles, using blocks of wood to create a form that echoes nature. Maybe it reminds you of a tree stump, maybe it reminds you of a rock, maybe it reminds you of a mountain. So we're going to be following a little bit different steps than they did. But we are going to be cutting the lid off and then scooping it out. That's the Kurinuki process. So the carving process is really meditative. I think you'll find it really satisfying to just carve and remove the clay little by little by little. We're going to do that over the course of a couple of days so the clay kind of gets more firm and easy to carve as we go. And there's the flange. And then I am going to ask you to be creative with your handle. So this person is making a beetle for their handle, which is a pretty elaborate handle. If you wanted to do something that elaborate, that would be phenomenal. But it doesn't have to be that elaborate. So you can see asymmetry is kind of important in the Kurinuki and wabi-sabi look. Like things don't have to be perfectly centered and symmetrical. They can be kind of off-center and asymmetrical, which again creates discomfort because we know and understand symmetry. It's really easy to tell if something is symmetrical and to know if it looks quote unquote correct. But asymmetry is a lot more challenging. You kind of have to go with your gut and let your gut tell you whether you've finished paddling or whether you need to keep paddling, or whether your form is truly balanced, like asymmetrically balanced. So that's where the discomfort comes from, because it's a challenge to know when you're done and to know when it looks correct. So you have to kind of be able to develop that trust in your own instincts about the look of your work. So these are the things I'm grading you on, kind of big picture things to be thinking about. The box does need to be carved from a solid chunk of raku. People who are at home, if you're BLA, you have a chunk of raku clay. If you're quarantining, there's a box of raku clay, little bags, pre-bagged for you, waiting for you by the attendant's office. So you can come and pick that up today. The walls of the box and lid should be consistent. The lid does need to have a flange and a finial. And then the marks and designs and overall aesthetic should look purposeful, not random, like I'm going to throw everything I got at this piece of clay, but purposeful. Like it might look weird. It might look, you know, like it's a clay that you beat up a little bit, but it should be beat up in a purposeful way. Like you made purposeful choices based on some experimentation. Because today you're going to be experimenting. You're going to be paddling that clay and kind of seeing what you get. And then once you see something that starts to work for you, do more of that, right? So that there's some unity throughout. So these are the steps that I'm going to be showing you today. So I'm going to pause this up on the screen. And I'm going to demo over here at table 6. So people who are kind of over in that zone, come on a little bit closer. Also, I got to close that door. Shia, would you mind closing that door? The noise from the wood shop is kind of loud. All right. Thank you. And while you're over there, would you also flip on the lights, please? Gracias. Okay. So first of all, you're going to need clay. And so no sketching required for this project because this is a lot of experimentation. And so I don't expect you to have like already in your mind exactly what your jar is going to look like because you're going to experiment today and use different tools to make your clay look exactly what feels right to you. So no sketching for this project. But you do need your clay. So people who are here in person, over on that wedging table, and then also on this wedging table, I have 3 bags of raku, 1, 2, 3. And the clay is already portioned. So all you have to do is open up the bag, and it's already cut. Just take one of these chunks, right? And the chunks are between 2 to 3 pounds. You know, you might get a little bit of bigger chunk, you might get a little smaller chunk. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be fine. So this is clay that's come directly from the place I ordered clay from, Continental Clay. So you really don't need to wedge it too much. You can wedge it a little bit. I just slammed it on the table a little bit, but it's already really consistent. So it's not a lot of wedging needed. Then also over here are wood board, sticks, and paddles. Okay, so it's up to you to find some interesting tools that you think might work well. If you're going to share tools with someone, please wash it before sharing it, or wash your hands after you've shared it. People who are at home, you should have a wood chunk in your swag bag, or people who are quarantining and just picked up a little bag of raku, you should have a board in there as well. I think I remember to put a board in everybody's bag. Okay, so I'm going to start with this mound of clay, and maybe I'll start just by kind of pounding it on the table on my little canvas mat to start to begin to give it a shape. Again, this is pure experimentation. So as I'm turning it and paddling it and just using the table as a tool, I'm kind of getting this crystal kind of shape. And if I like that, and if I kind of want to go with that as an idea, I can take my block of clay and work on making each side as flat as possible. Now the clay straight out of the bag is going to be really soft and really pliable. And so that means it's going to be really easy to work with today, but also it's not going to have a lot of sharpness to it. In fact, the wood is kind of sticking to it. It's almost suctioning the chunk of wood to the wet clay. So I'm going to get my basic shape in place. So I don't want to forget about the top and the bottom. Also, you want to think about, like, what is this going to be? Is this going to be a jar? I guess all of these are really jars, and they're not candle holders or incense holders because they don't have holes in them. If you're going to design a candle holder or incense holder, it will need holes at some point, and we'll do that later. But you want to think about the overall form of it. When you are eventually cutting a lid off this thing, you can decide if you want to cut the lid off really high or if you want to cut the lid off really low, either kind of like 2/3 up or 1/3 up, or the kind of 2 different spots where we might cut the lid off. So just kind of think about that form. Think about how easy it's going to be to slice a lid off and then hollow it out. Let me show you. I'm going to change the shape now just to show you what not to do. So there was a kid last trimester who made this really awesome shape, and I'm trying to replicate it. I'm not doing a great job, but it was something like this, kind of almost like an hourglass shape, wider and then narrower and then wider again. Cool shape, great, that's fine. But when he sliced the lid off and had to scoop it out, it was really hard to get past that narrow part to carve down into the wide part. So for what it's worth, you got to think about how you're going to hollow this out. So you want to develop a shape that is going to be a shape that you'll be able to easily hollow out. Okay, so I changed up that shape, and I'm not super keen on that. So I'm gonna use some of these other tools and see what they give me. So now the shape is getting some little lines on it because this stick has little lines in it. I don't want to forget about the top. I want the top to be interesting. I want the bottom to be interesting. And I don't know that this tool is doing it for me. So I'm going to try this paddle. This paddle has holes in it. So it's going to leave some little bumps in the clay. And again, a lot of this is just going with your instinct. And you'll kind of just know when it looks right. And I don't know that this is looking right. Not what I'm envisioning. It's like a potato with a bunch of warts on it. I don't know that I dig the potato look. So I'm going to go back to the original board that I had. So if I use the flat side of the board, I can get facets like a diamond or a crystal. If I use the corner of the board, which I kind of really like using the corner of the board, just gives you these rounded crags, like crags in a mountain. And I kind of dig that. So I'm going to go with the edge of this, and kind of give it a little bit of a bottom so that it actually sits level. Yeah. I don't know what it is about this particular shape, but this is what tells me it's done, right? I'm kind of digging how this is looking now. So because this clay is kind of soft and kind of wet right now, I'm going to bring it outside. Okay, people who are at home, you just go outside your house. People who are here, get your tray that you should have still from your last project. Put your project on your tray and just put it somewhere out in the grass so it can get some sun. Nice bright sun out there today is going to firm this up a little bit. We're going to let it sit out there for about 10 minutes. While that's happening, you're going to get a little bit of additional Raku clay. And not much. So let me just grab a bit of additional clay. Maybe I'll put a bag of Raku clay out that is not chopped up into nice blocks. And we can all just scavenge from that other box of Raku for this extra little scrap. And you're going to make some different finials. So it says up on the screen, what does it say? Does it say that? Yeah. Step number 4, take a few additional chunks of clay and just experiment with different finials. And the finials can be made in the same way that you made the box. So I might take my board here, kind of harder to do that texture on this small piece of clay. Okay, so that could be a finial. We're going to do some, it's kind of like sketching 3-dimensionally, just playing around with some different shapes and ideas. All right, so that could be one finial. Maybe for the next finial, I want to sculpt something that's a little bit more like true to life. So I'm going to make a little creature that might, you know what, I'm going to make a bird. It's easier than making, I don't know what I was going to make, a sheep that would live on my mountain. I don't know. I'm going to make a bird for one of my finial options. Okay, so just pinching out a fat little bird that could live on top of my box here for a finial. And then let's do one more finial idea. I'm going to roll a coil and I'm going to use my wood and I'm going to do this technique where I just kind of roll it back and forth on there so I get this earthworm kind of texture. And then maybe this could be an interesting little finial. Now I'm not attaching anything yet. These are just kind of playing around with ideas. Yeah, I don't know about that one. Which one do you guys like? Do you like the one that's like roughed up, similar to what I did for the box? Do you like the bird, or do you like the earthworm loop? Somebody needs to tell me.
The bird.
The bird, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to keep the bird. That's going to get wrapped up so I can eventually attach that as my finial. These other two, and when you make your little practice finials, talk to the people around you. See what they say. Let them, let them give you their input on what they think would look good. But then these other two, let these dry out in your locker, and we'll eventually slate these down to make Raku slip, just like we did with the fortune cookies. So that's why you're making 3. So you keep your best one, you end up drying out and slaking the other 2. So people who are at home, you don't have a stash of extra Raku. So before you do all the paddling on your block of clay, just hold back like this much of your Raku so you can do the finial thing too. All right, so now once you have your finial kind of figured up, that's going to go in a little bag in your locker. Then you're going to come back and bring your box in from outside. And what you're going to do, I want to make sure that I'm getting these steps right. You're going to end up cutting off your lid today. And hopefully we want the clay a little bit more firm before you cut the lid off so that things aren't distorting as you're cutting them. So on every single table, I put one of these kind of makeshift wire cutters. These are what everybody at home has. It's 2 washers with fishing line tied in between. Some of you who are quarantining, I may have forgotten to give you one of these, but you can just use dental floss or fishing line at your house. And you don't even have to tie the washers on the ends. But I'm going to actually cut my lid today. And so I got to decide, is my lid going to be on the upper third of my pot or the lower third of my pot? If this is going to be a jar that I want to store stuff in, it should be in the upper third. So I have plenty of room to store stuff in this jar. If it's going to be a candle holder or an incense holder, maybe you want to cut lower, because then basically it'll be kind of like the reverse of this. So you pick this up and your candle or your incense is going to go down there. And then this bigger thing is essentially your lid. And then you lift that off and that's where your holes are cut and the light shines out or the smoke comes out. And so I think I haven't ever done a candle holder before, so maybe I'll make a candle holder with this. So I'm just going to take this wire tool and oh my gosh, this is so satisfying. Pull it right straight toward me. I'm trying to make as straight of a cut as possible. And now, oh my gosh, people at home didn't get to see it. Sorry, people at home. Now, when I lift this lid off of here, come off. Look at that, beautiful, clean cut. Okay, and now this is the point. We're not going to do any hollowing today. Your clay is going to be too wet for that. But this is the point at which, can you hand me my pen, please? You are going to want to have a little key so that tomorrow, and you know, when you take your lid off and you start carving, you're always going to remember which way this lid goes on. So temporarily for today, this doesn't have to be the key that you end up having, but just take any sort of a tool and line up the exact points that need to go together. I just used the cap of a pen to do it. And then I would probably, before I wrap this up today, does it say this up here? Yep, place a paper towel between the lid and the box, and then photograph it. And that's your, well, actually, you don't have a progress photo for today. Right, because you're, no, you do have a progress photo, never mind, sorry. Ceramics A that doesn't have a photo. So just a little scrap of paper. And then that is going to go between them so they don't get stuck together. Snap your photo, bag it up for tomorrow. Okay? Now, looking at the time, if you had to cut any of these steps out today, cut out the finial step, because that you could do tomorrow. Okay? So if we're short on time, paddle the clay, put it out in the sun, let it dry for a little bit. And then I suppose you might have time to make the finial then, but then make sure you cut it, paper towel it, and snap it before the end of the hour. People who are here, any questions? Okay, if you have a plate to finish, do that first. If you are totally done with the plate, you can grab your clay, you can grab your paddle tools, and you can start paddling. All right, people who are at home, stay on the line. The door to the outside is unlocked, so if you go out there to dry out your project, you won't get locked out. Hi.
I just walked in. I have some lotion.
Oh, thank you.
I have another one in my pack.
Oh, we can always use lotion in
I
here.
know.
Thank you, thank you.
I know. And you know, is lotion that cream? Do you know? I just went to the derm.
But thank you so much. I will.
Better than lotion. But this is lotion.
That's the good stuff, huh?
No.
Oh.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Just an FYI.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Better than
Hey,
lotion.
hey everybody. I'm going to stop recording.